when it came to my music, it was a case of I always had that little activist type attitude. I will write experiences that I've seen in the streets of Bradford, and just think, how have we got to this in 10 years?
Yes, of course, absolutely. The 80s, most of the best music was made in that era because it was, a lot of it was about the depression that Thatcher had started putting the country through. So you had a lot of really good groups that had come out that was making music, very political music about all those type of times. So which we don't really get now. We haven't really got any musicians that are out there, especially in times that we're in now, because look at the crisis that we're going through, right? And we haven't really got any artists. Right, there's probably a couple of like grime artists, but obviously you might not know that type of music.
Still gonna judge me by the stuff that my friends tell. Well, all the stories that the tip of my pen tell. No fear, I'ma let the tip of my pen show. That yo, Theresa May, where's that money for Grenfell? Well, you thought we just forgot about Grenfell, you criminals. And you got the truth to call us savages. You should do some jail time, you should pay some damages. We should burn your house down and see if you can manage this. MPs live coke, we just smoke a bit of cannabis. So don't get me for this, so be woke. This year I'm dishing out L's and free smoke. They tell us that we're fucks, I try and bust a myth, but someone told the Daily Mail they can summer.
But there's probably a couple of grime artists who deal with like the everyday stuff, because that's what rap artists do. They deal with the everyday stuff and they speak about their their realities. So I can imagine there's probably going to be quite a few guys from the grime circuit who do speak about this, but their music's not so much mainstream as before when you had like this town is coming like a ghost town. Right, that was literally about the times that we're going through now, right? But only we're much more of a modern society now. I think most people have probably got a lot less money than they had in the 80s now. With the crisis they're going through. But I think money's a bit easier to get. And that's what I think. That's what I think one of the things are, because back in the 80s, the government wouldn't have stepped in to help you, but you got to remember. But at that time, they hadn't sold off all of our utilities yet. So that was the reason why. That was because they could keep control of the utility costs.
Welcome everyone to our latest Sunday roast. Great to have you all back again, and we have some amazing guests as always. Let's start off with Alex, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go on to our guests then.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm a historian. I also run the channel Political X, and I'm the co-host with my fabulous friend Max Robespierre.
Very good. John, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm the MC John Ribs, and I run my channel By Any Means Necessary. If you've seen my channel, then obviously you'll know the type of things that I say.
Daily Blaze, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your channel?
Hello, I'm Daily Blaze, and I just run my channel. My niche is about stuff like what happens in House of Commons. Cross-party select committees is my main niche, because you guys seem to enjoy them.
And I'm Max, and I run the Robespierre channel. I talk about Brexit and UK politics in general. Alex, what are we going to talk about today?
We've got utilities. So we've got a lovely little segue that's just happened there from introducing and talking to ourselves about what's been going on, and also relating it to music, which I thought was fascinating. Because you were all saying like best music seems to come out at the worst times. And I think there's something to be said about that. I always felt, and this might be a bit controversial, but the Red Hot Chili Peppers seem to make their best music when they were at their lowest points, with their drug use and everything else. And that was like I love it how everyone's nodding. Not just me that thought that. And with slow amounts of time, over the period of time, that you can see that the edge has come out of the music a little bit. It's not to say don't produce amazing tracks. There's definitely a difference between Blood Sugar Sex Magic and Californication, and you can hear that the edge is definitely downgraded over time. But the main point is we're talking about utilities, not about music. It's shocking what we're seeing. I cannot believe how much damage is being caused by the government not stepping in and helping out with the utilities of people's homes at the moment. And it's interesting as well because Euronews brought out an article, I think yesterday, making a comparison between utility costs in Europe versus the UK. And apart from the Czech Republic for gas, UK second. Everyone else is below that throughout the whole of Europe. And there are various reasons for that. So, for example, Viktor Orban's obviously in bed with Vladimir Putin, and they've got a major oil and gas deal set up now with Russia, which is nuts. But obviously that reduces their price. We also know that France has got control of EDF, so they're able to say, right, it's just going to be a 4% rise. So everyone's got to take a little hit, but for the rest of us, we're going to try and balance that out through the public person, as well as obviously helping out with payments. I think they're offering £100 payments. What are they doing in Italy, Max? What's going on over there? How are they helping out with you guys?
So the government here have put a cap on the price of energy. I haven't looked into how much it actually is, but that's the sort of support that they're providing. I haven't received my latest bills, so I want to really look at that and see how that has changed. I get it every 2 months, so it's been a while since I received one. But there is support, and something I've noticed is a lot of I haven't seen any real change in stores, in cafes, in bars. Like when you go past or if you go in, there isn't this fear that there is in the UK, because I've covered on the channel a number of stories where there are cafes and bars and restaurants closing in the UK because they can't afford to pay the bills anymore. Just to go off topic for a little bit, there was an interesting story. I don't know if you guys had heard it. It was about the governor, allegedly, the governor of a school in Surrey, I think it was, sent a message into LBC.
They say, I have to remain anonymous, but I'm a chair of governors at a school in Surrey. I've just told the school not to pay the bills. There's no way these energy companies will cut schools off. The option is to make 60 teachers redundant in January, more at Easter, and class sizes of 125 plus. This government, in his opinion, are useless. They only care about themselves, so do the opposition.
Just don't pay the bill.
Wow.
So, because the alternative would be laying off teachers, the alternative would be cutting back on facilities, larger class sizes, and the response was, no, if we don't pay the bill, they're not going to cut us off. It's very risky, but I think it could actually be a good idea, because if they do increase class sizes and if they do lay off teachers, it's not going to really have an impact, in the media. While if the school closes because they have no energy, they have no light and no heat, I think the local MP will sit up and listen. Unfortunately, it requires something like that.
But didn't that happen with the blackout in the 70s? Kids had to take candles into schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see all of you nodding your head.
But the difference with that is, like, one thing is taking a candle, but kids have to use computers. If it's really cold, you need to have the heating on, and also in different parts of in the north of the country, it gets darker a bit sooner. So, or I don't know what it's like when there's light. Maybe in north of Scotland, it's probably late morning. I'm not sure, but. It's very cold and it's dark. You need to have light. You can't have kids with candles. And if they need to use computers, well, what can they do? So I think this idea of saying don't pay it, because what can the utility do? Then it becomes a battle between the utility and the school, and the public will be on the side of the school, they'll not be on the side of the utility.
I absolutely agree. And if they're private companies, what are they going to do if they've got everyone going, well, we're not paying you? They'll just collapse.
Yeah.
And then what will we do?
Then the government will have to intervene.
That's just crazy to imagine that situation. But, we've seen, I think it was an Oxford professor, Sir Dieter Helm. He used to be a Tory policymaker. He said this is all the fault of the government. John, I'm going to bring you in because I see you smiling there. And of course, you've got the Malcolm X slogan, by any means necessary.
Yes.
So was that smile in part because to do anything that's necessary, either to keep school or just to point out civil disobedience?
Well, firstly, I'm on a key meter. So I'm really annoyed, right? Because, I just wouldn't pay my bill. That's how it would be. I would not pay, because I find it completely ridiculous. But going back to saying, what you were saying about the schools, right? You imagine like the French, I can't remember who it is that owns the Dartford crossing now, right? But, if you go over there, right, and you don't pay, they'll come and climb through your car. Right, so this energy company, right, they'll take the school to court. over this bill. So these are private companies. I have to completely disagree with this thing about this being part of the war in Ukraine. This is mismanagement. This is mismanagement of our governments over the last, probably 50 years. It's a complete mismanagement. You don't sell off your utilities. What country sells off all of their utilities to other? We've got governments running utilities in this country, just not our government, right? We're dealing with politicians who can't even run a train line. No wonder they can't run utility companies. No wonder they have to sell off all the utility companies. Starting with British Petroleum, they should have never sold off BP. Why would you sell that off? That's like selling off the golden goose, right? It was completely ridiculous to sell these things off in the first place, and that's where the conversation needs to start, right? For this country, right, to go against Jeremy Corbyn and put Boris Johnson in power, right, is beyond me. It's completely ridiculous. Absolutely, 100% ridiculous. For us to have lost all of our utilities now. See what's happened here with Boris Johnson coming into power. Because Boris Johnson has always been a complete incompetent in every job he's had. Right? Yep. I don't understand where all this support comes to Boris Johnson, because I've seen Boris Johnson's whole career. Right. And I can tell you, he's been completely useless in his whole career. What's happened here is putting Boris Johnson in power is accelerated this period, because we was going to get to this stage, but in probably a decade, probably in 2 decades, 25 years, we was going to get to this stage where utility costs, right, was going to be out of control for the people of the country, because these are private companies. Their only interest is to make money. Right. Their interest is not to give us cheap utilities, right, or to give us, like decent water through new pipes, not Victorian pipes, right, that they should have taken out from when Thatcher sold it to them, right. So their job is not to do those things. Their job is to make money, and their job is to pay bonuses and to pay shareholders, right. And anybody, right, who thinks that you're giving a human being, right, you might as well give him a bank. You might as well say to them, you know what, take this bank, right? Do what you want with it, because that's what it's like giving away your utilities. And we've given these things away. Imagine you've got people in this country that are running our water companies, but being paid £1.5–2 million plus bonuses. Right, to give us water. Any fool, right, could take over one of those companies, right, and get water to our door and get water to our taps. Right, this whole concept is completely ridiculous. All of these things, should be run by a minister, and they should have people working underneath that minister. If we was running a Jeremy Corbyn model, what would be happening now is you would have these companies, right? None of their executives would be able to earn over £100,000, because that's what he said. If you've got a government contract, right, then you know what? You can't be earning millions, £100,000. That's your top money, right? And this country, right, listen to that, and they said, oh no, we want to vote for the Tories. The people in this country are psychos. They're sick. There's something wrong with them, right? There is a lack of intelligence, right, for the working classes and poor people who vote for the Tories. There is a complete lack of intelligence from these people. And, right, all the Tories have to do is say, oh, look over there. There's some boats coming from blinking France. Right, and those people over there, right, are ready to come and take everything away from you. Right, they're going to take your jobs. They're going to take they're going to block up all the hospitals, all the roads, and everything. Right, this is how the Tories have stayed in power all these years. Right, they've kept themselves in power, right, by blaming the other.
Yeah.
It's everybody else's fault, right? But and they have destroyed this country. Sorry, Max.
No. I just like to bring in Daily Blaze as well. But and what you said really is completely true. And the idea that the utilities are owned by private companies, and we have the examples of raw sewage being pumped into the sea.
Oh my God!
You have but also when it comes to the energy company, and I'm just pulling this out of my head now. I don't know if this is true or not. But if you look at Norway, for example, they, as far as I know, the Norwegian government own the resources. So when oil is pumped out of the ground or gas is pumped out of the ground, they're the ones who are in charge.
Of course. Well, that's right. That's how it should be. I mean, BP was ours. How could the British people allow that to happen? Darren, hello.
Hello there, my good man.
As a northerner, Darren, as a Yorkshireman, what were your experiences with the Thatcher sell-off of the crown jewels? Because what was your sort of take on all that? And John, that was a great speech. I can see why you're an MC. That's a lot of energy.
I've drawn the short straw. I'm going to follow that.
Oh, please.
But when you talked about the 70s, I was a kid. I was a little kid, and it was coats for blankets in the wintertime. And I'm the eldest, scare the living daylights out of my brother because I put the coat on backwards, sort of, do all that, scare the living daylights out of him.
You need computer games, so you got that for entertainment.
Yeah. I still remember my ZX Spectrum 48K. When my mother bought me it for Christmas, she saw it rubber cage, thinking, I'm not going to tell anybody because I think I'll be embarrassing, but then she felt quite proud whenever it says, I bought my son a 48K ZX Spectrum. She went, oh, that'll do. but yeah.
That'll do.
That'll do then.
That'll do.
But by any means necessary, talked about why they voted for Boris Johnson. I totally get it. It's like you've got grandmothers who want to mother him. You've got people who don't like bullies, and that's why it's the brand Boris. The ruffling the hair, the ridiculous suit, the overweight. Clearly, he's pinched that suit off rump all over the Bailey's washing line. and it's the brand Boris. This is a guy who went to Eton who had a ear infection, who mastered this art of making people laugh so they don't bully him, and it's all been mastered.
Yeah.
And if you ain't got grandmothers who want to mother him, like my grandmother, she'd have said, "Damn, you bloody, will you get that muck off your hair and straighten your hair? You look like a right scrot." And and it's the same with them. And it's and if you don't get grandmothers want to mother him, you'll get blokes and people, because we're a nation who don't like bullies. And when you've got Keir Starmer tearing him a new backside, their viewers, you leave him alone, he's doing his best. And there are people who want to be like him, because nobody can get away with what he gets away with. If we try to get away with lying in two jobs, let's be honest, where it's encouraged to lie and he gets sacked for lying and he falls upwards, they want to be like that. They view him as their hero figure. So I totally get the reason why he won in 2019, because of a simple reason. He will bluster his way through when you're living in a house where the roof has fallen in, it's teeming it down, cats and dogs, and he will tell you outside the sun is shining and it's our best days ahead of us, and don't worry, I'm your man. And as Michael Heseltine said, he's one of these where he will see which way the wind is blowing, where people are running, and he'll say, "Whoa, follow me! Gadzooks!" And he's off. And then when the shit hits the fan, pardon me French, he's nowhere to be seen. So I totally understand why he won in 2019. And as somebody who lives in the north, as much as I read Jeremy Corbyn's manifesto, my only criticism was too long. I've got people who find who've never read a book,
Yes.
so we're never going to read that manifesto, and they'll read the Mail, they'll read the Sun, and all that, and they'll say, I've got a friend of mine said, first time ever I'm going to vote Conservative because I can't vote for that man, and it's as somebody who got more into politics when Jeremy Corbyn became the leader, because I thought, oh, who's this guy? Oh, he seems interesting, different. Yeah. And then I went on to my education of reading. The very first book that ever made me cry was The Ragged Trouser Philanthropists by Robert Tressel. That is, and it made me understand the reason why. And this stuff about dinghy spotting, it's nothing new. This book was written over 100 years ago, and they were doing it then. Yeah. Dinghy spotting. You've got the councillors who are only interested in making money, and there's a chapter about the gasworks where the gasworks company out of time, they can't do anything, so they try to rig it where they'll buy a cheap piece of land to make an electric company. Falls flat on its face. Spent a shed load of people's money, people suffering with rickets.
I can't hear Darren.
Whenever something goes wrong, John, it's the Russians. They don't like us.
Of course, it's got to be. It's got to be. That's what Boris Johnson or Liz Truss would say. It would certainly be the Russians, with anything going wrong in this country. But just picking up from what Darren was saying, with regards to Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson, I don't know what it is people see in him, right? There are, for the working classes to have looked at Boris Johnson, right, who is an adulterer and a man who left his wife while she had cancer, right? Arranged to have a journalist beaten up. There's £50 million from the Garden Bridge that's just gone missing. There's all of these things with Boris Johnson. Did he prorogue Parliament before the 2019 election? Was that before or after? It was before, wasn't it?
Before.
Yeah, it was before.
Yeah, so all these things, they still voted for him after all these things, right? And for me, there's a level of incompetence with Boris Johnson. And I was saying before, that where this country was going to, right? It was always going to get to this point, right? Where the people, where the utility companies are supplying us something, right, that we can't afford. And, they're not supplying us Bentleys. It should be a luxury item that we can't afford. So everyone who's working class or poor should say, oh, there's luxury items that we can't, not gas and electric. I heard about one person whose bill went up from, they was paying 150 on the gas. So that's gone up to 450. And they're paying 500 on the electric. And that's gone up to 2,500. This is like commercial. Right? Because the commercial businesses in the country are getting no help at all at the moment, right? And there's no cap on their bills as well. So we've got now all of our pubs who are going to go out of business because they can't afford their utility costs. Imagine running the fish and chip shop, and your bills have gone up to like £3,000 a month.
70k, John. In some areas, they're claiming 70k a year.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Run a fish and chip shop. I know. Which is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
There's no way they could be. There's no way they could be earning that, because there's no way you could earn £70,000 a year, right? In profit in a fish and chip shop, unless you're probably on somewhere like Oxford Street, right, where you've got you've got like 2 or 3 stories, right? Every day, and it's just packed every day. Because the cost of just the mere cost of these the fish and the potato, everything has rocketed up. So people who are running fish and chip shops, there's so much that are closing down. I keep on to my local chippy, I keep on asking them, because right now, a bag of chips is £3, right? For a bag of chips, that's in my local chippy. That's £3, right? And I'm like, well, wow. that is.
I'm just gonna quickly ask then, John. Darren, what's the price of chips where you are at the moment?
Well, up here, we usually called it the poor man's banquet.
It was.
Yeah, and I've not been to a chippy for years. For years. Because like when I were a kid, my dad would go to work. He'd come home, and if it were Friday, he'd say me and my brother, go to chippy, get some fish and chips for us all. It'd be a banquet. And if it were raining, me and my brother, we'd have this flash of genius. Halfway down the road, there's this great big massive puddle, and we'd say, I know, why don't we let cars splash us? And we'd come home drenched, fish and chips ruined, and sent to bed by my dad for being absolute prats. But yeah, I've not been to a chippy for years. And I think also it's a little bit the case of with my mobility, I'm not as mobile as I used to be since my operation. I tend not to go in because I don't want my weight to balloon and make things worse for myself. But I can imagine won't be cheap because like you won't get much change. Because my son, he went with my wife into Bradford Town Centre, and he got fish and chips with some doner meat, and they were about £6.50.
Yeah,
but I think what could be changing is slightly because whereas before they would say stuff like our best years ahead of us. Look, it's rule Britannia way, will beating. You're now seeing the evidence for your own eyes and ears that you look at that bill and think, how am I going to pay that? My wife, she's started with writing times, because like I'm like with you, we're like with you by any means. Key, use the key, so we can't get away with it.
Yes,
and she's now writing down times how much we're using this and that and the other, and we just I can't remember who mentioned it, and absolutely spot on. Why they're asking us to basically be careful with what we use. We've always been like that. So why are you asking us? And I just think it shows you how out of touch these people are.
I just wanted to say something before we move on. I'm just thinking as well as you, like the fish and chip shop, that they're struggling because they have to put up their prices, but also they're struggling to pay the bills. I'm just thinking also, like for example, a corner shop that's really, really important in a community. If that closes, then what happens? People will have to go.
I was a news agent for 10 years, right? And I can tell you that obviously that time, because that, we're talking about, I sold because I had 3 shops and I sold a lot. I sold them in 2007. So from about from the 90s, from 97 up to 2007, I was a news agent, and it wasn't cheap then running it. But so I could imagine now, because obviously they don't, you can get away without using gas. Right, because everything's electric, but then you've got a lot of fridges and freezers, and obviously in the summer you need to have air conditioning in the summer, because otherwise all your chocolates melt, right, in your shop, and so you lose all your stock. So you're better. So you need to have that. But so it wasn't cheap then. So I can imagine now, right, that it's probably going to, you're probably looking at probably £1,000 a month. Back then, I was paying about probably about 200. So you can imagine now it's probably going to be about £1,000 to £1,500 a month just to run a news agency. But as I said, they can get away without having gas, so they haven't got that bit of a burden on them. But again, if everybody's paying out all their monies on their utilities, so that these guys can, so they can buy Bentleys and yachts, right? The poor and the working classes will not have the money to spend in these shops. They'll not have the money to spend for £3 for a bag of chips. How are they going to find free? Right? Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's about £10.50 for cod and chips. As Darren said, that was the poor man's food before. That's what it was. I've always enjoyed fish and chips, right? But nowadays I'm looking at that and saying, well, for 2 potatoes fried, right? You want to charge me £3 for 2 potatoes? Because that's the reality of it.
But the major question here is, did you have scraps with your fish and chips?
No. No. No, that was
Oh God, are we heading towards the conversation of mushy peas, gravy, or beans and cheese? Is that where we're headed with this? Which one's the best? Or curry? Curry's obviously the
I think it's always got to be mushy peas with chips.
I'm baked beans and cheese. I'm going to ask Max, because Max, I assume cotton chips is just not done up in northern Italy. So what about pizza? Has pizza gone up in price?
It has gone up in price, and what we've always had is we've had takeaway pizza or eat-in pizza, and there's been a massive shift to takeaway pizza. So people would normally go into the restaurant, sit down, and have a pizza in the, on a plate. But now most people are just. But it's always been a staple. So, I think what people have been doing is, instead of going to a restaurant, which you're still talking about minimum €20, about 15-16 pounds a person, just to have a pizza and a glass of beer or a Coke or something like that. People are shifting away from that to just getting a takeaway. So you can get the basic pizza for about £4, and that's quite big. So takeaway. So if you go, it depends on where you go.
That restaurant would sell out.
Yeah, of course. It's straight away. I mean, that's the large pizza over here. I mean, takeaway would probably be about £17 minimum.
Yeah,
for a pizza, which is nuts. When I lived in Sicily, I found that it was cheaper to go to the restaurant and order takeaway than it was to get a frozen pizza.
Yeah.
It's nuts. But it also says something about the system over there, and also probably the element of the attitude towards the food over there. It's rather having it fresh instead of frozen, and the taste and everything else. Interesting. So I'm going to bring this up as a point. It might be cheaper then, because we just talked about Italy, we've talked about the cost of living, we've talked about utility bills. I was having a look today about, is it actually cheaper to rent a flat elsewhere and live there for a month in Europe? And I found several countries that you could do this in. So Italy, Sicily, Catania, Athens, Sofia, and Belgrade, all are charging rent through various companies for a month for £400. And you probably could even haggle that down. So if your bills are low,
is that for a room?
500.
Is that for a room? That's
for an entire flat.
400.
We should so be getting Airbnb on here as our sponsors. We're doing them a huge favour here. But basically,
there are some issues with Airbnb, but we won't go into that.
Okay, no Airbnb.
400 for a whole month.
For a whole month, all inclusive in bills and everything else, entire place, and that was for two people to stay there, so you can split it, so it's 200 each, one bed, and I mean Athens for December.
You're not talking about some little village out in the middle on an island somewhere. You're talking about the city, the capital.
Although
city.
that could also be quite nice. I said Belgravia, I said Sofia, Athens, and Catania, and those are the ones I've only looked at briefly. But I'm just like, you could even take the rebate that we're all meant to be getting for 400 quid, and there's your month, and then you just shut all the electric and gas down in the house, and you just leave. The only thing with flights. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, we live in rip-off Britain. Everything about the government, about this government and previous governments we had, has just been to rip us off. The governments, I can't see, right, how politicians actually like the people in this country. I mean, the Germans have got like they had a €9 train ticket that could take you anywhere in Germany, up and down the country, anywhere in Germany. And now you think to yourself, well, it was, at the moment, I live in Basildon at the moment, right? Now, for me to get from Basildon to the next town, probably the next town along, right, would probably cost me £9 on the train. Just once. And their ticket was for however long. Right? I think it was for a month, or might even be for longer, for the whole of summer. Right? But how is our country being run in the way? Because again, they've allowed house prices to run completely out of control. That's one of the main factors in this country. That's why everything is so high. Because if you've got to pay, if you've got to pay like 275 grand for a terraced house, right? Which is a complete joke, because a lot of these houses, what these people are paying this money for, they're worth 60, 70,000 pounds. They're not worth 250, 300, 400, 600 grand. They're not worth that money. But because they've made money quite free to get in this country, that's why all of these guys have had a great time. People who build houses, because they know to themselves, they know the type of money what they can coin it. The true reality, if the true reality was there, and people was paying what these houses are actually worth, the houses would be so much cheaper to build. The materials would be so much cheaper. But they have to keep on putting the prices up because of the house prices are so high. Right?
Yes.
And that's another thing that's completely ruined this country by them just saying, well, you know what, house prices, they go up more than the price of gold. They go up more than the price of anything else. But, it's one of the only things, right, that doesn't devalue. Everything else, apart from really prestige cars, everything else depreciates in value. Houses just seem to steam up ahead all the time. There's no bottoming out. And when a lot of these houses got to 150 grand, and I thought, oh, they've got to bottom out there, because people who are earning 18, 19,000 pounds a year, how the hell are they going to afford a house that costs 550 grand? I mean, it makes no, they can't even afford to rent that house. If you could rent a flat for £400, right, for a month, because a room would cost you that in fact, in London, a room would cost you more than that. A room would probably about £650, £700, right?
Yeah,
and that's a cheaper room.
For a flat,
not
we're
a
talking
flat.
about 1,001, cheapest I'm aware of, 1,200. For a flat. For a flat.
Oh, for a flat,
For a flat.
for flat. I mean, if you used to go to somewhere like, if you go further, if you go in London, you go to somewhere like, I think Manor Park is probably one of the cheapest. Right? I don't know if you know Manor Park, but that's probably one of the cheapest. Now, around there, you can probably rent a one-bed flat for about £800, right? But Manor Park, no disrespect to any people probably about Manor Park, but it's a crap hole. Right, so for them, really, around there, to rent a room should really be about 60, 70 quid a week.
Don't sit on the fence by any means necessary. Just tell us what you really think. Yeah,
there's no way that people should be paying that type of money to rent a room in these type of places. For me, but that's what makes this rip off Britain. And I squarely blame the people who vote for the Tories.
Just to interrupt for a second, I think, but you've hit the nail on the head there. And one of the reasons is if you're a homeowner, that you're more likely to vote Tory because you're concerned about house prices dropping.
Yeah.
And then you even had Tories a couple of years ago. There were Tories who voted against, you probably know this, against a measure that would have made it lawful, brought it into law that houses, rented accommodation had to be fit for human habitation. Yes. Not that it had to be a very high standard or any, just fit for human habitation. And a number of Tories voted against that. Why? Probably because they're slum landlords.
Probably, yeah.
But also the Tories know that they can sell the idea that, look, if we build all this new affordable housing, it's going to affect your house price. So vote for us and we'll maintain the status quo. It's the I'm all right, Jack mentality. And I think that's something that a lot of the people are voting for as well. They don't like Boris Johnson. They don't like the Tories. But they're like, yeah, but if my house price drops, that's bad for me. So I'm going to hold my nose and vote for that. And unfortunately, that's a big problem as well that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah. So if you have overpaid for your house, right? There's no way you're gonna want to see people coming buying the house next door. You paid 400 grand for your house. No way you're going to want to see people coming next door and buying the house for 150 grand because the house prices have dropped. So so now they have put people in that situation where people have to be selfish, where they have to say, well, you know what, I don't care about what happens to other people, right? I've had to pay that much, so why shouldn't everybody else pay that? That's the position what they've put everyone in. And it's for the Tories, it's very, very smart because the truth is, there's not really much Tories, right? But they're very good at selling their message, right? Because the truth is, the real Tories are the upper classes, the real upper. I'm talking about your Jacob Rees-Mogg type upper classes, right? A lot of these people who are living on council estates and thinking that they're Tories, right, are just, they're just the level of foolishness is unbelievable. You live on a council estate, you're driving a Mondeo, and you think you're a Tory, right? You know, for me, for a real Tory, right, will have a double fronted house, right? You know, their partner won't have to work. Right, you know, they'll go on like maybe 3 or 4 holidays a year, 2 proper international holidays, 1 jaunt into probably Europe, and they'll probably have like a little house or something like that in Devon. Right, that's what a true Tory is. Right, Tories don't live in places like Canning Town or Forest Gate or Stratford. Tories don't live in those type of places, or in Brixton, or they don't. These are not Tory places, right? You can go all in the northern towns as well, and none of these are Tory places. So Tories, they're a very small minority, and they're all the upper classes. But the message, what they sell that message so well that everything is those people's fault, right? Whether it's black or it's Asian or it's single mothers or it doesn't matter, right? They will turn Northerners against the Southerners. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
They do everything they can to
divide
keep
and
themselves
conquer.
in power. Right? But the thing is,
John, I'm going to bring in Darren because I just want a northern perspective. Do you feel as if this the case? Do you feel as if there is a message being pumped up north to create and help? Because that's a great point, John. And I think there is an element of divide and conquer in this country.
Of course it is.
And it keeps us all against each other. And I'm going to plug the show. This is why we're doing the show, John. Because we want to get us all together.
The metropolitan Islington elite. That's Hackney. It's one of the most deprived places in the country.
And one of the richest as well. You can buy £1 million flat there.
I don't understand. No, I don't understand. Because again, right, Hackney is a crap hole. It's a shithole completely. Right? I don't understand these people.
John, it's Vietnamese restaurants. I worked in Hackney. For 4 years.
Believe me.
But
the
Vietnamese restaurants, they're damn good.
Believe me, I love London. But the truth is about London, right? London has got a major divide, right, of exceptional wealth and nothing, right? Yeah. You go somewhere like Notting Hill, and you can see it right there, right? Exceptional wealth, right? Some of the most wealthiest people in the world live in there, right? You go around the corner, you got Grenfell Tower.
Yeah. It's really interesting how they designed the city here, because it is. You can walk around the corner, you've got £1 million house, walk around the next corner, and it's Grenfell. I am going to bring back Darren, because I do want to know about this north-south divide from his perspective. Yes. And we'll come back to you, John.
Well, yeah. Well, when you talk about housing prices, my house, I bought mine for 32,000. Just over 32,000 over 20 odd years ago.
Yeah.
So I suppose, in a way, I should be one of these Tory people, because my house is probably triple what it is now. Yeah. But I think the difference for me is this is a house I grew up in. This was my grandma's house.
Yeah.
This is I see parts of this where my desk is now. This used to be. They used to where they put the coal in,
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is my office now, but I can still see the Yorkshire stone walling where they put the coal in. And I walk around the house. I'm going to the kitchen where my grandma, she would have the canaries in the cages hanging around. So this house is my home. I know I will die here.
It's not an asset. It's a home.
I know I will die here, because this is home to me. I have a picture of me as a little baby in a baby walker in the front garden. So I will never sell this. I will never sell this home. The reason why we bought the home was because I didn't want to let it go when my grandma passed away, and I couldn't let it go, and luckily my wife said, come on, let's do it. And we did. And the thing is, I feel, when I had my operation in 2017, I think, can I imagine if I had to have that operation in 2007, I would have probably lost this home. I would no chance of being able to pay for it. But when I can see people who I find mystifying is up here working class Tories. we once, cause like me and my wife, we go watch the football, and we got talking to this guy and he's there, and he first says, if you want a government that's fiscally responsible, you vote Tory. And I couldn't help myself. I couldn't help myself. I says, "Oh, why have you got a Tory in your back pocket, or something? Are you a Tory donor or something?" and there are people who vote Tory up here, and remember when he prorogued Parliament?
Yeah.
The one guy, Brexiter, absolutely mental. We need our sovereignty. And there's saying, "Go on, Boris, you get him told." Well done. And you're thinking, he's taking away your sovereignty, you nincompoop.
Your freedom of movement.
Yeah.
But
it's like the bash the sovereignty notion, and he's taking away their sovereignty. He's prorogued Parliament. And you just think, are you right in your heads or what? And this is the one important thing that I noticed when I was at school. When it came to your final year in school, you used to have choices. You used to have choices for lessons. You have your normal maths, English, and You'd have choices. One of them for me was, and even then I had a fascination for politics. And I think it was politics and politicians or something like that. And I wanted that as my number one because I just found it fascinating and I was looking forward to it. I was told I had to change it because, for a simple reason, out of a year of over 1,000 students, only 2 put the name down for it. So it just wasn't worth doing it. There's your answer. And there's your answers to, for me, stuff like that should be in the curriculum. Come on, mate, because you know the reason why they won't do it is because you never have a Tory party in power ever again, would you?
Of course, that's exactly right. Because they do it in Eton. If they've done it in your normal schools, in your normal comprehensive, then you'd have a lot more children who would be a lot more interested in politics. All of this, all of this, it's a plan. It's a great plan from the upper classes because, as I say, right, those are the people who have been running this country from ever since. They infiltrated the Labour Party and they took it away from us, right? Tony Blair is not like Tony Blair. I've always said Tony Blair's a conservative. Back in the day, they went against Michael Foot and put Thatcher in, right? And Thatcher done all of her damage, and then from there, right? They have every single Labour leader that we've put up, apart from Tony Blair, as I said, who to me is very similar to Keir Starmer. These guys are more Tories, they're more blue-red than they are, just pure red, right? So I think that's the direction that the Labour Party is going. But you were saying something about sovereignty, and for me, right, our sovereignty, we've taken our sovereignty and we've given most of it to the French. The French have got most of our sovereignty now because and the EU, because they tell us what to do, right? And we just have to ask them how high they want us to jump. Right? Because we can argue whatever points we want, but for those of us, because we're all in the know, we know what's going on, we can see what's going on, and Britain is making itself look like a complete fool, right? Because down to the paperclip that we send into the EU is checked, down to the last paperclip.
Yeah, but like you saw with Macron when they talked about British politics. They just started laughing, a lot of them.
Of course.
Remember when after Liz Truss said a ridiculous remark?
They
all started laughing with a laughing stock.
We
they
are
just
absolutely.
laugh at us.
And yeah, Sean, I just want to say something about the paperclip. There was a thing that Brexiteers were complaining about, how the color of the ink at the beginning of after the exit, when consignments were going to the European Union, a lot of them were being rejected because the ink was wrong, and the Brexiteers were complaining about, like, look how ridiculous this is. Isn't it better that we're out? It's like, no, but you have to comply. This is a perfect example of why it's you can complain that it's stupid, and we can argue whether it's stupid, but you have to follow it if you want to export. And there was a company. I uploaded a video today or yesterday about it. It was there's a company that's been trying to sell beer, a small producer trying to sell beer into Europe. And now for them just to send 12 12 bottles, it costs £400. But it's if they want to send they've given up on trade fairs and stuff like that because it's just too expensive. Before, I in Europe could go to their website and order a consignment of beer from them. Now I can't because it would be, I don't know how much it would cost, but it would cost hundreds of pounds just to get it delivered, just to actually get it, not the delivery. It's the customs declarations and everything. It's just not worth it. Sorry, go on.
You have to wonder, what kind of country, right, puts economic sanctions upon itself? Who does that? Why would you do that? I mean, there's
Korea.
No excuse. There's no excuse for that at all. I mean, yeah. There's absolutely no excuse for that. And you've got people like Jacob Rees-Mogg still selling this to people, still telling people how much of a good idea this is, even though he hasn't come up with one good idea yet.
Yeah. Just quick, when you mentioned Jacob Rees-Mogg, I still tell this tale about a guy. It's just when me and my wife go watch the football, we go and we see him, and don't talk about politics because he's a Brexiter, and banging my head against a brick wall is bad for my health and bad for my back as well. But he once put a post out on his Facebook feed saying something from Turning Point UK, and he's got a picture of Jacob Rees-Mogg and this clown who said, "I used to be a Labour activist, but now Jacob Rees-Mogg speaks more for the working class."
Yeah.
Now, usually I don't engage, and on this one I just couldn't help myself. I says, "Well, can you explain to me what he said that's inspired the working class?" And first thing it was plummy accent, and I says, "Plummy accent is no excuse for intelligence." I said he's thick as mince. I says he's been privileged all his life. I said, have you seen his dad's book about disaster capital and blood on the streets, and this and that and the other? And I was telling him about when he's moved to Republic of Ireland, this and that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when I talk about stuff like they talk about the sunny uplands, our best years are ahead of us.
Yeah.
And I once watched a great stream by a guy called Kevin Logan, and he's on Twitch now. But have you ever heard of a guy called Vosh?
Vosh?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, I was watching a bit of he was going over some. He does live stream, and he was doing this stream, and he talked about there's no point trying to talk to these people. It's basically you are wasting your time because all they will fall back on is a case of they will say that, "Oh, well, that's my opinion." And even if you say but your opinion's wrong, it does not matter.
No,
that's my opinion, and I'm sticking by it. And there is no getting them back. They are proper down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, isn't it? It's you can't budget. And I know a couple of people have been trying some stuff with their parents who are Brexiteers, where they've swapped their papers over. And interestingly, that's started to change their mind a little bit. So you could sort of say with the Brexit thing, I've always said, I think this had to happen for Brexiteers to really realise what Brexit was. Now, of course, we've got people like David Davies coming on and going, "This isn't a real Brexit, this is a Remainers Brexit." It's like we've got the person who's
like the sunk cost fallacy
with an 80-seat majority, and it's still not Brexit. It's never going to happen then, David. You idiots. On the sovereignty issue, we're not only now influenced by the EU, we're influenced by Russia, who embedded themselves in our country deeply. We're influenced by China, and we'll be influenced by India, and we'll be influenced by the United States. Yeah. We're a tea bag floating around in an ocean going with the current. Yeah. And Patrick Mimblett, the economist who was behind a lot of this and backed Brexit and had the economic policy behind it, clearly said this is what was going to happen. Told the committee, told Zahawi about this, who hadn't got a freaking clue. It went straight over the top of Zahawi, which is very disturbing considering he's the Chancellor right now. Yeah. I think we've got less sovereignty for leaving. Oh, we just don't want to see it.
Yeah, we've got about 40%. We've got about 40% of the 100% of sovereignty that we used to have. Because remember before, we could have said to the French, well, why are all those booths not manned? In fact, we don't, you don't have to man them. You can just have one person there because we could just literally drive straight through. But now, when the French say, well, you know what, the more our politicians upset the French, right, which is, I'm having the right laugh about this because our politicians upsetting the French, right, because I personally think, right, that this serves the Brexiteers, right, even though I can feel the pain myself of Brexit, right, but for them, right, for those Brexiters, for those people who voted for this, right, and for them especially the ones who now realise, right, what they, how much of a mistake they've made, especially for them, right. I just look at them people, and I'm just laughing at them because now they're trying to tell the French, you put more people on those booths to make sure that we can get through because you know what, we're exceptional and because we're British, right? Go bollocks. Right, absolute bollocks. Yeah. That's what the French are saying. And the more our politicians upset them, is the more the French are just going to drag their feet. And they can because they've got so much of our sovereignty now, and they can dictate to us what to do.
Yeah, of course they can. Of course they can. I'm just quick because I remember reading Ian Dunt's Brexit: What Happens Next, and there was a chapter when. It was a time when Theresa May and Donald Trump were in charge and said they'll do the photo ops, and all that. But once all that's done, they'll be in a room and they'll be up against hardened, seasoned trade negotiators who basically do trade deals before breakfast and still have room to do a big Whopper hot dog, and they'll put the trade deal in front of them, and it's horrific. And if they say to us, well, can't we negotiate? They'll say, well, no, see you later, because they're like the great white sharks around a carcass. They can see we're in a position of weakness. So
yes, but you have to remember
that we've lost our sovereignty.
But you need to remember we have continuity. Boris Johnson in Liz Truss. So that's the thing.
We have our best years ahead of us.
She has brought some fantastic, she's already done some fantastic deals. I mean, if you look at Australia,
hit the ground.
The Australians are killing themselves with laughter over the deal that we've done with them. I think the New Zealand would also be just, knowing that they're going to just slaughter off our farmers.
Face. You saw her face. Biggest smile the size of Bournemouth when she was talking to Boris Johnson.
Yeah, so everybody else has done very well out of Brexit, apart from us, because so much of our contracts. I mean, you look at how we're begging to be brought back into Horizon. We're begging.
I'll tell you the best one for this is Angus Brendan McNeil on some of them cross-party select committees I've done. He would just absolutely tore Liz Truss to bits over these trade deals, and all she could say, well, you're looking at the past, and I'm looking into 2050 and 2060. I'll probably be dead then.
This is what we've been asking for, and what the Secretary of State has repeatedly refused to provide: an analysis by her department, authorised by her closest ministerial colleague, of what would happen if we had just stuck to the terms of the EU-Japan deal. The final assessment produced last month by this department for the long-term impact of the UK-Japan deal, the forecast increase in UK exports to Japan was £2.6 billion. And the forecast increase in UK GDP was £1.5 billion. Now, let's compare those figures to her department's assessment for the long-term impact of the EU-Japan deal. Under that assessment, the forecast increase in UK exports to Japan was not £2.6 billion, but £4.3 billion. And the forecast increase in UK GDP was not £1.5 billion, but £2.6 billion. Now, I don't know about you, Madam Deputy Speaker, but that doesn't sound to me like further and faster or above and beyond or additional or higher to me. It sounds like smaller, slower, lower, lamer.
Yeah.
It was meant to be instant. Meant to be better than Europe now.
Inflation's going down in Germany, in Spain, it's going down. In this country, they're talking about here. I said this on one of my shows a good few months back, right, that our inflation is going to hit over 20%. And today, right, they're talking about 22% inflation.
Goldman Sachs, yeah, 22%.
Right. So, you know, and I said this, you know, I said it was going to go. But, you know, for the thing is, for the working class and for the poor anyway, you know, inflation, what is it, 10? It's nearly 10% now, isn't it? Right. But inflation at 10% is probably about 14, 15% for the working class and the poor anyway. Right, inflation at 10%. That's only for your rich people and your higher earners. But for lower,
like I was told, they knew what they were voting for.
Well, we know that it's more than that. If you're on ground level and you're looking around, you know that some of the prices have doubled, which is 100%.
Of course.
And hyperinflation is something that I keep banging on about. We've got hyperinflation on a lot of our products.
Yeah.
But it's still talked about in the news. It's almost like the media don't want to know.
Yeah.
But anyway, on that note, we are going to have to say goodbye.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
No, guys. Bye.
About going abroad, it might be cheaper to bugger off out the country into Europe and rent a flat for a month than it is to stay here, which is twisted.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then, and I found, I'm a huge Airbnb nerd and travel nerd.
Okay.
So I've done my research, and I think you'll be quite shocked to where you might be able to end up over Christmas.
Yeah.
I mean, and then of course, if you want to get away from the family.
Like, there is always that.
I'm sorry, I can't afford to be here. We'll have to go abroad, and I'll come back in January and buy in the sales.
Yeah,
that's so going on the outtakes.
Yeah.